Come get the tea from me. LVB.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to What's the Gossip. And today, in part 2 of my Free Britney series, I'm joined by that surprise witness, the Twitter legend who helps me understand all the legal jargon going on behind the scenes with Britney Spears and her conservatorship. How are you, babes?
I'm doing great. How are you?
And where in the world are you today?
I am in Princeton, New Jersey today, working from my home office.
So, on Twitter, you literally help me understand things that my little brain can't comprehend. But how did you get involved with the Free Britney movement?
So this summer, actually, I guess we're coming up on a year pretty soon. It was in July. I was just kind of, stuck at home inside. I couldn't really go see friends like was the case for most of us. And I came across this TikTok that seemed pretty much like a conspiracy theory. It just didn't seem like it was real. And it was some people may have actually know the reference, but it's the one where Britney's kind of in that yellow cut off crop top and she's spinning around with her flowers. And there's like this song playing. And in this TikTok video, somebody had superimposed themselves over the top and said, this woman has no rights. She can't drive. She can't see her kids. She can't do all this stuff. And I was just like, there's just no way that's true. So I, of course, go to the internet and look for news articles about what's going on with Britney Spears. And, I'm not like a huge Britney Spears fan outside of my involvement in this way. And so I didn't really keep up with her over the years. So I realized I couldn't really find anything that was going on with her in the legal way. None of the newspapers were really reporting on her court battle. They were more talking about custody and her dad and her shows and stuff like that. So then I went to a legal database that I have access to because I, at the time, had just graduated from law school and I was supposed to be studying for the bar exam. But instead of studying for the bar exam, I looked up every single publicly available case that was filing that was associated with Britney's case. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that the video that I saw was far from a conspiracy theory. It was actually true. And the person who had made the video was right. And, ever since then, I pretty much just have gotten in deeper and deeper because the more I learn, the more I realize it's really messed up and corrupt in this situation.
What was the most troubling thing that you discovered first off?
So I think there were two things that I discovered that were super troubling for different reasons. One, in a legal way, was troubling for me as someone who studies the law. And the other was in a personal way. Just, it really struck my moral conscience.
So how did they manage to start the conservatorship?
It actually turns out that it doesn't take very much. They had a team of lawyers, as many people will be familiar, Vivian Lee, who is now a player still in the game today. We have Gerald Cohen and Geraldine Weil. And essentially, they got the documents together and they needed to decide who was going to be the conservator. That was going to be Jamie, of course, of the person, and Jamie and Andrew Wallet as co-conservators of the estate. So they just signed some consent forms saying, I consent to be the conservator. And, a couple people wrote affidavits and said, Britney is susceptible to undue influence. And there's this bad guy, Sam Lutfy. And if we tell her about the conservatorship, Sam Lutfy is going to find out and he's a danger. And they also said that Britney Spears had dementia. Now, of course, anything that would give a diagnosis away would be hidden away from the public, which, as it should be, we shouldn't have access to Britney Spears' medical records. I don't think, as my opinion. Of course, people are entitled to their own. Because, the counter argument, just to kind of go off on a small tangent to that is, if we had access to it, we would know for sure if this is constitutional or not, right? Or if this is legit or not. But of course, I don't want people to have access to my medical records. So I'm going to say, I don't think we should have access to her medical records. But yeah, they said she had dementia, and I know for sure that they did not file the necessary capacity declaration before asking the judge not to give Britney notice. So it was I don't know when they did file it or if they ever did. We will never know as the public unless somebody tells us.
My God, it's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. Conceivably, could they have lied? Yeah. And who would know?
So from the very start of it, what legal rights was she denied?
She was denied the right to hire her own attorney, which, of course, is one of the biggest ones that I noticed right away. She was also denied her right to due process, which consists of kind of like having a little bit of notice before the government intends to take away any of your civil rights and liberties. She didn't get any notice, right? She wasn't even told that this conservatorship hearing was happening. And in fact, her dad and them petitioned the court for permission not to give her required due process. And the court said, sure, that's fine. Another right that was taken away, in my opinion, from Britney is that she was not afforded equal protection under the law. She was determined to have some certain disability, dementia, right? And on the basis of that, she isn't allowed to decide how she spends her own money anymore. She isn't allowed to freely go where she would like to go anymore, to travel. She's not allowed to make medical decisions for herself anymore. And those are rights that we all should have. The only reason she's not having those rights is because she's been determined to have a certain disability. And it is my opinion that that is a violation of the equal protection right to being treated equally under the law, because you're not supposed to be being treated differently just because you're a different religion or race or nationality or national origin, or no matter if you're disabled or not. You should not be treated differently under the law. And Britney Spears, in fact, was.
So if she wasn't given her rights from the jump, isn't there a way that can just reverse this because it wasn't done legally?
You can. The judge can sua sponte, which means on their own, in retrospect, looking back. She could determine Britney Spears does not need this conservatorship by virtue of the fact that it was implemented in an unconstitutional way.
Do you think it's always been for her best interests, or do you think it was for financial gain?
There's the family aspect of things, but then there's the lawyers and these professionals like Leigh Taylor and Andrew Wallet. So I think these separate groups of people may have had different intentions coming in. The lawyers, absolutely, no question at all in my mind whatsoever, is my opinion, right? That those lawyers obviously did it for financial gain because they're not doing it for free. I mean, they're not doing it pro bono. Jamie, I think, the father, the conservator, co-conservator at this point, I think he did it because he was losing control of Britney and she was doing things that he did. Actually, as a father, he probably was a little concerned. But I think that most of our fathers are concerned about things we do, and they don't put us in conservatorship.
Have you come across any similar cases of this happening to someone else?
Amanda Bynes, as we speak, is in a conservatorship. Her mother has told a court that she's incapable of taking care of her own finances and her own financial affairs. Courtney Love has come out and said that Lou Taylor herself tried to put Courtney in a conservatorship. Lindsay Lohan, of course, Lou Taylor tried to put her in a conservatorship too, according to Lindsay. And so those are just a few famous people who were associated with this exact person and these exact groups of people. There's no telling how many thousands of people are in situations exactly like Britney's right now who just aren't famous.
So if someone was just coming up to you now with no knowledge of this case, what shady antics would you tell that person from the jump to get them to realize how serious this whole thing is?
Well, I think at first I would just focus on the fact that Britney didn't have her rights intact whenever this happened. Britney's rights were violated. And I think the reason that is so troubling is if it can happen to Britney Spears, it can happen to you or me or our dad or our mom or our grandpa. And I think if I was just telling someone kind of off the street who had never heard of this, I think I would tell them that it could happen to you if you have enough money. I mean, it could happen to anybody. And I think I also would just focus on how all of these players have been involved since the very beginning. I would focus on the timing, how Lou Taylor, ended up being in full, complete, and total financial control of Britney's estate for all intents and purposes. And she had been planning and plotting that since at least 2007, right? I would tell people to focus on her and say, what could her motivations be? We do know for sure that she tried to put other people in conservatorships around the same time. So I would just want people to start questioning these players and what their intentions really were. Don't take it from me. Just look at the facts and come up with your own conclusion.
Why do you think her father won't surrender?
That is an excellent question. I have asked myself that several times the last few days. And I mean, word on the street is he's not even that involved anymore. So I really don't know. I do not know. But I think the easiest, fastest, quickest, most efficient way to end this conservatorship is if Jamie Spears himself would petition to terminate it.
Do you think maybe he's not doing it because he has something to hide?
It's possible. I mean, the thought has crossed my mind. I certainly think there must be some type of ego component, whether or not he's trying to cover up legal wrongdoing or another type of wrongdoing. Maybe it's not illegal, but maybe he just doesn't really want Britney to be able to speak out freely because he may be embarrassed about things he's done or said or not done. Or, you know, I guess it's also possible he is involved in all this financial crime and, you know, the scheme. But I can't, you know, publicly make that type of an accusation against someone. But I can't see any reason how it's not possible.
So who do you think the worst offender is amongst that whole team of riffraff?
What a good question. The worst offender.
Because I would personally, I would have thought it would be Lou Taylor, but the fact that she's jumped ship while she knew it was about to sink and the rest of them have clung on.
So does that make you think it's less likely she's the worst offender?
I just think if she's jumped ship and the rest of them have stayed around, she obviously knows something that they don't, something that's probably going to come out that'll completely backfire on everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of thought Lou Taylor jumped ship because she saw the ship sinking and she wanted to save face with some of her other clients. But that's an interesting perspective that, you know, she knows that there's wrongdoing and she wants to separate herself from it. I mean, listen, logistically speaking, I feel like it's very unlikely that Lou Taylor isn't at least still in contact with these people because she has been in charge of the company's books and records for 10 years at least.
Potentially, when she comes out of this conservatorship, could she somehow reverse the whole thing and put her father into a conservatorship?
I mean, legally, yeah, she could, but, you know, I don't think that's likely because I think there's just going to be microscopes on high profile conservatorships henceforth. But yeah, I mean, by operation of law, I can't think of, and I don't know of any reasons why she wouldn't be able to put him into a conservatorship if she had compelling evidence that he qualified for one, you know, and usually that's supposed to be a lot of evidence. In Britney's case, you know, we haven't seen all the evidence, but it seems like the judge might have made a decision on her competence before even seeing any evidence.
So as an educated woman yourself, do you see her ever getting out of this conservatorship?
I do.
And if she does, do you think there's ever an option for her to get justice for what's happened to her?
Oh, justice. So I think that if you and I define justice and Britney defined justice, we all would come up with different definitions. So, I mean, when I think about justice for Britney Spears, it entails every single one of these people having to go through like at least a day or a night of that type of terror, of having every piece of your autonomy just taken away from you. And the one person you begged and begged your lawyer to tell the judge, please don't put that person in charge. That's the asshole they put in charge. I hope, you know, my sense of justice would be every person who put her in this and who kept her in this would have to feel that feeling. Britney's sense of justice might just be forgetting about all of these losers and, you know, drinking Bud Light out of a can around the fire pit of her house in Kentwood. You know, like, I don't know what Britney would consider justice, but I definitely think that to the extent justice entails consequences for their actions, I do think some people will have to pay some consequences from this.
Do you think it was a bad move for Vivian doing all those interviews referring to him as daddy?
Oh, man, this is another complicated one. I mean, I don't think Vivian did herself any favors in the public light. And I don't think Vivian helped Britney Spears' case. I don't think she helped her client's case, who's Jamie, right? I don't think anybody, I mean, maybe, actually, I take that back because I do think probably some like Karens around the world who watch like Good Morning America probably did say, oh, okay, well, that's a good enough answer for me. But I think Vivian probably did herself a lot of favors professionally because she put herself on the map. Who was saying Vivian Lee Thompson before the New York Times documentary came out? But now she's like a, you know, household name as far as conservatorship lawyers go. And so I guess it depends on whose perspective you're taking on whether it was a good move. I don't think it really helped. And I think it was really stupid. I think it was fiscally irresponsible for someone who's supposed to be representing a conservator. The root of conservator is conserve, right? Like to not waste it. And now we find out Vivian Lee Thompson actually got paid for her appearances to go on this media circus. And it's like, is that conservative with someone else's money? No. They're asking for over $800,000, close to $1 million for work since October. That's not conservative. That's not conserving. That's clawing for power, in my opinion.
Did you watch Framing Britney Spears?
Yes, I did.
And what was your thoughts?
Oh, man. I think in general, I would say it was good because it informed the public that Britney was still in the conservatorship. I think it brought the conversation to the household, to the workplace, to the friends groups, people that weren't talking about it before. I think it legitimized it in a way that made it seem like not quite like a conspiracy theory. I do wish that they had focused, even a little bit, mentioned even, the sort of constitutional implications of the conservatorship and how fast this was pushed through and who the players were. I mean, they didn't mention Lou Taylor. And frankly, she was an orchestrator of this. Lynn Spears said it in her book. It wasn't even like the New York Times would have had to go out too far on a limb to implicate Lou Taylor because it was already public evidence in this book. So I was a little disappointed that they didn't highlight the corruption of the conservatorship system or the court or the law or the usual players or any of that. It was kind of like, oh, the media was mean and that's why Britney's in this. We were bad. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that happened. But it was a lot of other stuff that had happened that wasn't mentioned in that documentary, and I wish it was.
Well, let's hope they tackle it in Framing Britney Spears Part 2 that I got the tip off on last week that I told you all about.
I know. I've been asking everyone else around, like, have you heard of a Framing Britney Spears Part 2? And everyone's like, no.
Do you know how many people were in my DMs going, oh, can you just tell me who it is? Can you tell me who it is? And I was like, no. And then they were like, oh, you're lying. And I was like, no, because if I leak the name, he'll get a cease and desist and then he won't be able to take part, and then that would have ruined that aspect of the whole show. But from what I can gather, this is exclusive, so you're hearing this first as well, is that this is focusing on her inner circle that she chose before she went into a conservatorship.
So I have to ask.
Yeah, go on.
If your inside source is Billy B, because it sounds familiar.
If my inside source is Billy B?
Yeah. Because like he would be in the inner circle, according to him.
I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, it isn't him. But he's probably involved. Do you know who people keep saying is Sam Lutfy? And then they go, is it her boyfriend Sam? And I went, yeah, okay, like all those people haven't signed NDAs. They're all screwed. It would have to be people from beforehand because nobody else can risk it.
That's true. And I mean, a lot of people from beforehand have been completely dragged through the mud, or they have been served cease and desists or restraining orders or sued in some other kind of way. So a lot of people are scared to death that they're going to get sued. And honestly, it's a well-founded fear.
So what's your thoughts on Billy B? Do you think he's the full shilling, or do you think he's slightly padding out the story?
I think Billy B on some level believes that he is in contact with Britney Spears.
But then he leaked that voice memo the other night, which kind of confirms that he is.
I don't know anything about a voice memo, so maybe he is. I don't know. I don't know about it.
They leaked a song called Exaholic about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And it was a demo that she hadn't finished, and he leaked a voice memo on Sunday of her singing along to it.
So what are the fans saying? Because I don't really consider myself in that group of people who would know what Britney Spears' voice sounds like versus an impersonator, for example. So are the fans saying that that is Britney? From
a legal standpoint, I don't think he could get away with saying all of this crap if it wasn't true.
No, I mean, yeah, I've listen, okay, so just what's my actual opinion? I don't know. And so what I'm doing right now is just kind of going back and forth with evidence that it is and evidence that it isn't, because I'm always constantly weighing it, and I haven't come down on one side with him. But what I can say with some sort of confidence is I do think he believes he's in contact with Britney Spears. I don't think he's bamboozling us. I think if anyone's getting bamboozled, it may be him by a voice actor or a catfish. But I'm willing to keep an open mind, because at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't know. And even if I heard, like, even if he was like, hey, BJ, like, I'm going to call you in 3 ways with Britney Spears. Like, I could easily be bamboozled too. I don't really know like what her voice sounds like as opposed to an impersonator. But I mean, yeah, there is evidence that you have cited, of a previously unreleased and an unfinished song. I mean, that's why I said, what are the fans saying? Because if the fans are saying that's her, then I do think that's compelling evidence. I think that's strong evidence that he is in contact. But then again, he posted that picture that was apparently 3 years old before, thinking it was some like new leak or something. I don't know. I'm just kind of, what do you think?
Fans are like the tide. They just pick and choose, who they hate this week or this month, with like Billy B or even Sam Lutfy. I followed Sam Lutfy for a few years, and he's been dragged through the mud. Like apparently he was this terrible person. But then when you look at it, is he the lesser of two evils?
Well, and I mean, that was another really compelling thing that I noticed from the very beginning of my research into the court documents was all the things that, Team Conservatorship accused Sam Lutfy of doing, they pretty much ended up doing. Like, one of the things was, well, and I don't know to what degree you'll have to censor this, but, one of the accusations against Sam by the conservators when they were trying to put Britney into the conservatorship was he's crushing up pills and putting them in her food. And that's pretty bad. Like, maybe he shouldn't have been doing that. However, what did that voicemail in 2019 say? Again, we don't know if that's a real voicemail or not, who it's from, and we can't independently validate it. But according to someone who claims to be a paralegal at Andrew Wallett's former law firm, they were saying Britney had to take medication against her will and without consent, or else she had to be locked in a mental institution. So how is that different from crushing up pills and putting it in someone's food? Or another thing that they wanted to do was, another thing they held against Sam Lutfy was he's controlling her. He won't let her use her phone. He's taking her phone. Well, I have it on good authority that she also doesn't have to have use of her phone under Jamie, right? Based on what we've been able to tell from the media. Does she have access to her phone under Jamie and Jody? Doesn't seem like it. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. But they were accusing Sam of drugging her, of controlling her, of, trying to take over her life and influence her. And then they stepped in as conservators and did, for, from all appearances, exactly that.
So finally, what do you see for the future of the Free Britney movement?
The movement. I anticipate, and this is something that I really hope I'm wrong about, but I anticipate the Free Britney movement fracturing into sort of camps and factions. I think there's just a lot of distrust and paranoia among, myself included. And I think that, when I came in July, it was like euphoric. It was rainbows and butterflies and peace and love. And everyone was just giving everyone everything and sharing things and sharing other people's tweets and this thing and that thing. And now we have just, you see it. It's just so much stuff that doesn't have anything to do with freeing Britney Spears that I'm ready to start talking about that again. And it's like sometimes it feels almost like a political statement, or you're taking somebody's side to like share a thing or whatever. And I really don't like that it's become that. And so for that reason, I just can't see the movement continuing on unless everyone gets on the same page on like, is that important? Because I don't think it is.
So what's the best way for people to help?
I think the best way for people to help is, if you are in, especially the state of California, contacting all of your local and state representatives and telling them to audit this case, to put an oversight committee, and just look into this one case. And then just let the public know, listen, y'all don't need to see everything, but we've looked and everything's all up and up and up. And like, I don't think that'll be enough. However, I think it'll move the needle. It'll get people talking about it. The only way that we're going to free Britney Spears through a grassroots way is going to be going outside of the Free Britney movement echo chamber. And that means talking to your friends about Britney Spears conservatorship, or your parents or your grandparents or your boss, or at the lunch table if you're able to still do that, at lunch or whatever. And it's like, for a while, even I've been kind of like, oh, I'm going to keep that separate from work. And it's like, why? This is a human rights issue. It's a civil rights issue. It is a constitutional crisis, and that is certain. So we should be talking about it. And I think once we're talking about it to more people that are not just, already on the bandwagon, right? Like us, we already know. But there are people who, all they have to do is tweet one tweet and everybody's going to look into what that is. You know what I mean? And I think it's getting those types of folks who have that type of influence, or even, not even in a social media way, right? Just putting out an email at their workplace. Perhaps there's several hundred people there, or maybe a couple lawyers hear about it and put, different teams in different ways on things. I just think it's going to take us getting a little bit outside of our comfort zone and kind of evangelicalizing, like telling people about it and asking other people to help and asking other people, how do you think you can help? Because I think we as the movement have kind of exhausted all the things we think. I mean, we're constantly coming up with new ideas, but we need to explode. We need to have a true worldwide army of people who are willing to send a letter, who are willing to make a call, who are willing to do these things that really advocacy movements need.
We need Kim Kardashian to help us.
Oh, so you haven't heard about that?
Oh, God. Unfortunately, yes, I have.
So I don't think we can really count on any Kardashian or Jenner coming to our help on this one.
No. Right then, babe, thanks for doing this. This has been amazing talking to you. It's very insightful as well. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
And what has been the latest part of the whole conservatorship that's really blown your mind?
The fees, the money, the amounts of money that they are blatantly, brazenly, openly putting in the public eye and asking the court for Britney Jean Spears to write themselves a check for, I think it's close to $3 million in the last 18 months just on lawyers. Jody Montgomery is petitioning for herself to have a $100 an hour raise. Why? Has she not been doing her job till now? Like, what is going to warrant a $100 an hour raise? Then you have Jamie Spears, who, for all of our accounts, he doesn't seem to really have even a freaking college degree, but somehow he's paying himself $16,000 a month for something. I don't know.
Cheese grits.
He must be making a lot of cheese grits. It's just all the money that's flying out of this estate on the one hand. And on the other hand, these lawyers going on television and saying that they were the reason that Britney Spears has not gone broke. It's like, y'all have barely kept her with the same amount of money for the last 10 years. Barely.
That's an incredible amount of money to not have after that amount of time from all these tours, residencies, X Factor, perfume. Like the perfume is $1 billion plus company.
Well, guess what? They don't put the perfume in the conservatorship documents. Lou Taylor said it's too hard to calculate that, so she just doesn't put it in there.
Oh, it's so annoying, isn't it? Right, thanks for doing this, babes. If anyone wants to follow her, it's That Surprise Witness over on Twitter. And we should be back next week with Pheromone from RuPaul's Drag Race, Season 9 and All Stars 4. Subscribe.
It's Leigh, bitch. Come get the tea from me. LVB.